All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring a PowerPoint presentation called The Role of Security Controls in Software Security.
Yes.
We're really going to get into, like, how do these things work? Why are they important?
Yeah.
And how they kind of contribute to making a software that people can trust. So if you've ever wondered what goes into making those digital fortresses that protect all our data, this is the deep dive for you.
Absolutely. We'll be kind of unraveling the mysteries and complexities of software security controls,
Right.
and how they help make sure that the software that you use every day is reliable, resilient, and as secure as it can possibly be.
Makes sense. So maybe let's start with the basics. What exactly are software security controls?
Well, you could think of them as the measures that are put in place to protect software from vulnerabilities and threats.
Okay.
And they're safeguards that help ensure the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of software and the data it handles.
So they're like kind of like digital bodyguards for all our data, making sure that no one who's not supposed to get in can get in, can't mess with the data or like shut the whole thing down.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're all about reducing the attack surface, mitigating those risks, and making sure that people trust the software.
Makes sense. Now, our source material dives into different types of controls, classifying them as preventive, detective, and corrective. I kind of love that it's like the three musketeers all playing different roles in the defense.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So preventive controls, you could think of these as the guards at the gate,
Okay.
stopping trouble
Yeah.
before it even has a chance to get in.
Makes sense.
So think of things like input validation, really scrutinizing data that's coming into the system,
Okay.
or access control,
Yeah.
making sure that only the right people can get in the first place.
Okay, so they're like that first line of defense,
Yeah,
stopping the attackers at the drawbridge. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, if you have really robust preventive controls, do you even need the other types?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, Ideally, you have a really strong preventative strategy, but it's impossible to account for every possible threat out there.
Right.
So that's where detective controls come in.
Okay, so it's like having the watchful eyes on the walls, constantly looking for anyone who might have slipped past the first defenses.
Yeah, they're all about detecting that suspicious activity that might have, made it past those initial checkpoints.
Okay.
So things like intrusion detection systems, constantly monitoring network traffic,
Right.
or audit logs
Okay.
that can give you a really detailed record of the actions that are taken inside the system.
Okay. So if anything did get in, you can at least track it down later.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like a digital detective kind of looking at footprints and security camera footage.
Exactly.
Gotcha. But even with the best defenses, I mean, sometimes stuff slips through the cracks, and that's where those corrective controls come in. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of these as the damage control team.
Okay.
So they step in to minimize the impact of a security incident after it's happened.
Right.
So that could be, patching those vulnerabilities that were exploited,
Okay.
restoring data from backup,
Uh-huh.
isolating systems to prevent the spread of a problem.
So it's not just about stopping attacks. It's about having a plan in place for when the attack happens, just in case.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how these controls are actually implemented in the real world. It's not just about adding them on as an afterthought.
Right. Yeah.
Our source material really emphasizes integrating security into every stage of the software development lifecycle.
Yes.
Or SDLC.
Yeah.
It's like baking security into the cake from the beginning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's walk through a few of those phases of the SDLC and see how it plays out. So for example, like during the requirements gathering phase, you can use techniques like misuse case modeling, where you're basically thinking like an attacker and trying to anticipate all the ways they could try to break in.
Yeah, it's like you're putting yourself in the shoes of the villain.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So you're thinking about how they might try to get into your system.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. Then in the design phase, it's important to think about things like privilege separation,
Right.
which is, limiting who has access to what.
Yeah, so not everyone gets the master key to the castle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about when you actually start writing code, the development phase? What kind of controls come in there?
So that's when things like input sanitization become really important.
Okay.
And that's about carefully filtering and validating the data that enters your system.
Okay.
So you can prevent attacks like SQL injection, which can let attackers manipulate your database. Gotcha. So it's like you're making sure that those messages coming through the castle gates aren't actually coded orders for the guards to open the door.
Exactly.
Okay. And then testing, of course, is super important for uncovering hidden vulnerabilities. Things like penetration testing.
Right.
Where ethical hackers try to break in.
Yeah, it's like a stress test for your fortress.
Right. So you're hiring the friendly burglar to try all your locks, see if anything's weak. And then once your software is built, ready to be deployed, what happens then?
That's when you want to harden your configurations.
Okay.
Make sure that they're secure by default.
Okay.
So that includes things like setting strong passwords, disabling services that you don't really need, and configuring firewalls.
So you're making sure everything's locked up tight.
Exactly.
Before you leave the castle.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And that's kind of how security is integrated throughout the whole life cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But beyond those like specific examples, there are some kind of overarching principles that guide secure software, right? Kind of like commandments of software security.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the first one is this idea of defense in depth. So this is like having multiple layers of security around your castle, moats and walls and guard towers.
Makes sense.
Even secret passages.
So if one layer fails, there's backups.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it makes it much, much harder for attackers to get through.
Okay, cool. What's the next commandment?
So the next one is called the principle of least privilege.
Okay.
And this means that, users and processes should only have access to the information and functionality that they absolutely need to do their jobs.
Okay, so you're not giving everyone the master key to every room in the castle.
Exactly.
You're right.
Right.
Okay, what else? What other wisdom do these security commandments offer?
So another important one is making sure that systems fail securely. So that means that if something goes wrong, like there's a power outage or the system crashes, it should default to a safe and secure state.
Gotcha. So no accidental open doors if there's a disruption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And along those same lines, we have the idea of secure defaults.
Okay.
So this means starting with the most secure configuration possible.
So not waiting for someone to make a mistake and leave a window open.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. It's better to start secure and then loosen up later than to try to tighten things up after something's already gone wrong. Okay. Any other commandments in this sacred text of security?
The last one is the idea of positive security models.
Okay.
And this is a little bit different, but it's the concept of focusing on what IS allowed rather than just trying to block known bad things.
So it's like having a guest list at the door instead of just a list of people who can't come in.
Exactly.
It's a much more controlled approach. Cool. So those are our commandments of security, I guess.
You got it.
All right. Well, now that we've got kind of the foundation of what these principles are, let's get into some examples. Let's see how these things actually work in the real world.
Absolutely.
So what are some common implementations of these security controls?
Well, a really good place to start is input validation.
Okay. Yeah.
Which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental control, and it's really important for preventing those attacks like SQL injection and cross-site scripting or XSS.
Two of the big ones that we hear about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So input validation acts like that meticulous gatekeeper, making sure that the data entering the system actually conforms to the expected formats and doesn't contain any, hidden malicious code that could cause trouble.
So it's like a scribe carefully checking every scroll and message that's coming in to make sure it's legitimate. Okay, cool. What else?
So another common one is authentication.
Right.
Which verifies the identity of users who are trying to access a system.
So passwords and stuff?
Yeah. And things like multi-factor authentication.
I love multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. So that combines something
your password.
Like a password with something you have, like a code from your phone.
Exactly. It's like having two locks on the door.
Exactly. We're trying to break in.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then, of course, we have encryption, which is, kind of a cornerstone of digital security.
Yeah.
And, it's all about taking that data and scrambling it up so that only people with the right keys can read it.
Yeah, it's like writing secret messages in code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is used to protect both data at rest, so like when it's just stored somewhere, and data in transit, like when it's being sent over a network.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So whether it's sitting in the vault or being carried by a carrier pigeon, it's protected.
Exactly.
Great. What other security things should we know about?
So logging and monitoring are really important for maintaining a secure environment.
So that's like having the meticulous record keeper writing down everything that happens.
Yeah, so things like audit logs give you a really detailed record of the activity inside a system.
Okay.
And that lets you see, what happened, when it happened.
Track down any bad behavior.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then finally you have things like access control lists, or ACLs, which determine who has access to what resources.
Gotcha. So who can go where in the castle? Who has keys to which rooms?
Exactly.
Cool. So now we've implemented all these controls. How do we know if they're working?
Right. That's a great question.
How do you test these defenses?
Yeah, so that's where testing comes in. And there are a few different ways you can test these security controls.
Lay it on me.
So one approach is called static analysis.
Okay.
And this involves reviewing the source code for vulnerabilities.
So you're looking for problems in the actual code.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like having the scholars poring over the blueprints of the castle, looking for any kind of structural flaws.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then there's dynamic analysis.
Okay.
And this is looking at how the software behaves in real time.
Right.
To see if you can spot any insecure actions.
So you're not just looking at the plans, but you're actually watching the castle in operation.
Exactly.
Seeing how it's used.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, of course, we have penetration testing.
Right.
Which is where ethical hackers try to break in and find those weak spots.
Yeah, it's like sending in the friendly burglars.
Exactly.
To test your defenses.
And then what happens after all of this is implemented and you've tested? Is that the end?
Well, not really.
Yeah.
No, security is really an ongoing process.
Okay.
So that's where continuous monitoring comes in.
Okay.
And this involves regularly auditing systems, reviewing logs, and just staying vigilant for any signs of trouble.
So the guards can't just relax after the castle's built. They've got to keep doing their rounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And to kind of help with that, there are these things called maturity models and metrics. What are those all about?
So these are basically frameworks that help you assess and benchmark your security practices.
Okay.
So think of them as ways to figure out where you stand and what steps you need to take to improve your security posture.
So they're like a security rating system for castles.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And to track your progress on this journey, you want to measure some key metrics.
Okay, like what?
So things like vulnerability density, which tells you how many vulnerabilities exist in your software. Time to remediation, which measures how quickly you can fix those vulnerabilities after they're discovered, and compliance rates, which track how well you're meeting industry standards.
Okay, so it's all about, knowing where you stand.
Exactly.
Knowing how quickly you can respond.
Yeah.
Cool. So, but even with all of these controls, metrics, models, maturity models, I mean, the landscape of security is constantly changing.
Right.
New threats are always emerging. Attackers are getting more and more creative.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the challenges that organizations face in this ever-changing environment?
So one of the biggest ones is finding that balance between security, performance, and usability.
Right, because you don't want a castle that's so secure that it's impossible to actually get in and out to do your work.
Right.
It's got to be functional.
Yeah, you want to find that sweet spot where security doesn't come at the expense of the user's experience.
Right, so those castle doors can't be so heavy that it takes 10 people to open and close them.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then the other big challenge, of course, is just the fact that the threat landscape itself is constantly evolving.
Absolutely.
New vulnerabilities pop up all the time.
All the time.
Attackers are constantly finding new ways to exploit them.
Yeah, it's like a constant arms race.
Yeah, it's like an arms race.
Yeah.
So you can never really rest on your laurels in security.
No, exactly.
You always have to be learning, adapting.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's talk about some of the exciting stuff that's happening in the future, some of the emerging trends that are shaping security.
Yeah.
What should we be paying attention to?
So one of the big ones is the integration of security into what's called the DevSecOps movement.
DevSecOps. That's a mouthful. What's that all about?
Yeah, so think about the software development lifecycle as a timeline.
Okay.
Traditionally, security was often tacked on at the end.
Right.
Almost as an afterthought. The DevSecOps is about baking security into every stage of the development process from the very beginning.
So it's not just the security team's job anymore.
Exactly.
Everyone's job.
Yeah, it's about collaboration.
Right. So everyone who's working on the castle has to think about security.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. What other innovations are shaping security?
So artificial intelligence and machine learning are becoming really important for threat detection.
Okay.
These technologies can help automate the process of identifying and responding to threats.
Right.
So you can, identify and respond to those threats much faster.
So it's like having AI guards on the castle walls who are constantly watching, looking for anything suspicious.
Exactly.
Okay. And then, of course, given all the data breaches and privacy concerns we hear about these days, there's a huge focus on privacy controls and data protection now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's not just about keeping people OUT of the castle.
Right.
It's about protecting the information that's inside.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, to kind of help guide organizations on this journey, there are things called frameworks and certifications.
Right.
What are those all about?
So think of frameworks like blueprints.
Okay.
And think of certifications as badges of honor in the realm of security.
Gotcha.
So frameworks like OWASP, which offers a structured approach to embedding security into the SDLC, and OWASP, which offers lots of valuable resources like the OWASP Top 10, which highlights the most common vulnerabilities.
Okay.
And then there are certifications like CSSLP and GSSP, which show a commitment to security expertise and best practices.
They're like getting knighted by the Security Council.
Exactly.
You're proven. You're a proven security expert.
Right.
Cool. But even with all these frameworks, certifications, technologies, I have a feeling that none of this matters if you don't have the right culture within your organization.
You're absolutely right.
You've got to have a security first culture, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you create that? What are the key ingredients to making your castle a bastion of security consciousness?
So it starts with security awareness.
Okay.
Making sure that everyone in the organization understands the importance of security.
So everyone's got to be on board.
Everyone, from the top to the bottom.
Okay.
It also means recognizing and rewarding those secure development practices.
Right. So rewarding people for doing the right thing in building security in.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, it sounds like quite a journey to build this secure kingdom of software.
It is.
But before we continue down that road, maybe we should take a little break. We'll be back in just a bit to continue this deep dive into the world of software security controls. Welcome back, Deep Divers. Before our little break, we were talking about how important it is to have a security-first culture and make sure that our metaphorical castle builders have everything they need to create secure software. But let's be real, even with all the best intentions, actually putting these security things into practice out in the real world, it's not always easy, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Building a secure software kingdom definitely has its challenges. And actually, our source material goes into some of the common roadblocks that organizations run into when they try to, put these principles into action.
Okay, so what are those hurdles? What are the things that kind of trip people up when they're trying to build secure software?
I think one of the biggest ones is just the ever-present constraint of resources.
Right. Not enough time, money, people to really dedicate to security. It's like you're trying to build this impenetrable fortress, but you only have a limited amount of stone and mortar.
Exactly.
And workers to actually build it.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And often security is seen as an expense rather than an investment.
So it's hard to get the king to give you the gold to build up those castle walls.
Exactly.
When he'd rather spend it on, a big feast for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough sell. And even when you do have the resources, there's often resistance to change within organizations, right? People are creatures of habit.
Absolutely.
And when you try to introduce these new security practices, they can disrupt those habits. People have to learn new tools, new processes.
Yeah, it's like telling those castle guards that they have to patrol a different route. They might grumble.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to make things more secure.
Even though it's for the best.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about the technical side of things, but the human side of it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. And then, of course, there's the challenge of balancing security with usability and performance. Right, like we talked about earlier. You don't want to make the castle so secure that it's impossible to actually live in.
Right, you got to find that sweet spot.
Right.
Where security doesn't get in the way.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, how do organizations overcome these challenges? Are there any secret strategies or tips for kind of navigating all of this?
Well, there are a few key strategies that I think can really help.
Okay.
I think first and foremost, you need to get buy-in from the top.
Okay, so you got to convince the king
Exactly.
the security matters.
Yeah, when security is a priority from the top down, it makes it a lot easier to get those resources.
Right.
Whether it's, money or people or time.
Okay, yeah, so it's got to be important to the leadership.
Absolutely.
What other strategies can kind of help organizations on this journey?
I think another really important one is regular training and awareness programs.
So it's not just about training the elite security guards.
Yeah.
It's about making sure everyone in the castle understands the basics.
Absolutely, yeah.
The cooks, the stable hands, everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now, one thing I really liked about the source material is that it goes beyond the theory and actually gives some real-world examples.
Okay.
Case studies that show the impact of security controls in action. So, for instance, one of them focuses on input validation.
Right, that gatekeeper we were talking about.
Yeah.
How it can help prevent those SQL injection attacks.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me about that. What happened?
So this company was able to stop an attack because they were carefully scrutinizing the data that was coming into their system.
Okay.
So they were able to prevent this malicious code from getting to their database.
So they caught it before it could do any damage.
Exactly.
That's great. What other examples are in there?
So another one is about this technique called anomaly detection, which is often powered by AI and machine learning.
And in this case, a company used it to identify what's called an insider threat.
Okay.
So an employee who is trying to steal data.
So it's like those AI guards on the wall noticed that one of their fellow guards was acting suspiciously?
Exactly.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so they were analyzing user behavior patterns, and they were able to spot this unusual activity.
So they caught the insider before they could make off with the crown jewels.
Exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. So, I mean, what are some of the key lessons learned from these real-world experiences?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is the importance of integrating security into the SDLC from day one.
Right. So build those defenses into the castle from the beginning.
Exactly.
Don't try to add them on later.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's much easier and cheaper to get it right from the start.
Makes sense.
And then another really important lesson is the importance of continuous monitoring and response.
Okay.
So you can't just set it and forget it.
Right.
You have to stay vigilant, review those logs,
analyze activity, and be ready to respond quickly.
So those guards got to be paying attention, even when it seems like everything's quiet.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's really about being proactive.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, the source material also talks about the importance of building a security-first culture.
Yes.
We touched on this a little bit before, but I'm curious to dive in a little deeper. How do you create that kind of environment where everyone takes security seriously?
So, like we said before, it starts with fostering security awareness.
Right. Everyone needs to understand why it matters.
Exactly.
Right.
And then it's also about recognizing and rewarding those secure development practices.
So, giving those castle builders the recognition they deserve for doing a good job.
Absolutely.
Building security in.
Yeah.
Cool. And to help with that, it's important to give people the right tools, training, resources.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. They need the right tools to do the job. You got to give them the best materials, teach them the best techniques.
And make sure they have access to all the knowledge that's out there.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. And then the source material also talks about the role of certifications and training.
Yes.
Right, to help build that security-savvy workforce.
Exactly.
So those are like those badges of honor.
Yeah, they can really help validate someone's expertise. So certifications like the CSSLP, which focuses on secure software lifecycle practices.
Okay.
And the GSSP, which is all about secure programming.
So it's not just about having the passion for security, it's about having the skills to back it up.
Exactly.
Okay.
And beyond those formal certifications, ongoing training is really important.
So it's not a one-time thing. It's got to be continuous.
Exactly. The world of security is constantly changing.
Yeah.
You got to stay up to date.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what the source material has to say about next steps. What does it recommend for organizations that are looking to enhance their security posture?
Well, it offers a very clear call to action with some crucial steps that organizations can take to strengthen their defenses.
Lay it on me. What are they? What's the first step on this road to security excellence?
I think the foundation is really about integrating those security controls into the SDLC.
Right. So make security part of the process from day one.
Exactly. Don't treat it as an afterthought.
Okay.
It's got to be woven into everything you do.
Yeah, it's like making sure that every stone that you use to build those castle walls is strong, is secure.
Exactly. You want to regularly evaluate and refine your security practices using those maturity models that we talked about.
So it's like those castle architects who are regularly inspecting the structure, making sure everything's up to code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about continuous improvement.
Constant vigilance. What else? Any other key takeaways here?
The last one is to stay proactive. Keep your finger on the pulse of emerging trends. Be prepared to adapt.
So it's like having, scouts out on the perimeter of your kingdom, always looking for new threats.
Exactly. The world of security never stands still.
Right.
So neither can you.
Okay, that's really insightful. So it sounds like this whole process of building a secure software kingdom, it's quite an adventure.
It really is.
But before we move on, I think the source material has a really nice, concise conclusion.
It does.
That kind of sums up all the key takeaways from our discussion. So what are the core principles that organizations should remember as they embark on this journey of building secure software?
Well, it emphasizes that, security controls really are the backbone of resilient software.
So they're essential. They're not just nice to have.
Exactly.
They're fundamental.
Yeah, they're the foundation.
Okay.
Without them, you're vulnerable.
Right. It's like building a castle with no walls.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're going to get overrun.
And it also emphasizes that integration, testing, continuous improvement, all those things are essential.
So it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Any other parting words of wisdom from our source material?
Yeah, it reminds us that building secure software requires collaboration, foresight, and a commitment to best practices.
So it's a team effort. It's not something that one person can do alone.
Exactly.
It's got to be everyone working together.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a really great way to sum up our discussion. I feel like I've learned a lot about the complexity and the importance of software security controls.
Me too.
And for our listeners who are eager to dive even deeper into this topic, I definitely recommend checking out the source material.
Yeah.
It's called, again, The Role of Security Controls in Software Security.
It's a great resource.
There's really good stuff in there.
And remember, the best security is proactive security.
So don't wait for something bad to happen before you start thinking about it.
Yeah, understand those threats, implement those controls, and foster that culture of security.
Great advice. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.
All right, welcome back, deep divers. We've covered so much ground already, talking about the different types of security controls, how to implement them, how to test them, real-world examples, all that good stuff. But as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what are some of the final takeaways? What parting words of wisdom does our source material offer for those who are on this quest to build secure software?
Well, it really emphasizes the idea that security is a journey, not a destination.
Oh, I like that. A journey. So it's not like a checklist that you just, check off and you're done.
Exactly. It's a continuous process of learning, adapting, evolving. Okay, I like that. What specific insights does it offer about this journey? What should we keep in mind?
One of the most interesting things it says is that building secure software is not just a technical challenge.
Okay.
It's also a human one.
Oh, the human element.
Exactly.
So even if you have all the right technology in place, things can still go wrong.
Absolutely.
Because of people.
Yeah, people make mistakes.
Right.
They fall for phishing scams. They use weak passwords.
Right.
They click on links they shouldn't.
Yeah, it's like having that perfectly secure castle, but someone leaves a side door open.
Exactly.
So how do you address that? How do you account for that human factor?
Well, I think it starts with education. Really empowering users and developers with the knowledge they need to make good choices, to recognize threats.
Okay, so training, awareness.
Exactly, yeah.
Making sure everyone understands.
Yeah, make it part of the culture. So it's not just the IT department's responsibility.
Yeah, it's everyone's job.
Everyone's job.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings us to another really important point, that the source material makes security is not a one-time fix.
Well,
it's an ongoing process.
It's a journey.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got to keep working at it.
Absolutely, because the threats are constantly evolving.
Yeah, the bad guys aren't just going to give up.
No, they're always finding new ways to get in.
Right.
New vulnerabilities to exploit.
So we've got to constantly be learning, adapting,
Absolutely.
improving our defenses.
Exactly. Continuous improvement.
Okay. Well, I think that's a really important point to end on.
Yeah, and the source material kind of sums it all up by saying that building secure software requires collaboration, foresight, a commitment to best practices.
So it's really a group effort.
It is.
It's not something that one person can do alone.
No, you need developers, security professionals, operations teams.
Everyone working together.
I was
like that. Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've gained so much from exploring this source material with you.
Me too.
And for our listeners who want to kind of go even deeper, I highly recommend checking out the source material yourself. The role of security controls in software security.
Lots of great insights in there.
Yeah, tons of great stuff.
And remember, the best security is proactive security.
So don't wait until something bad happens to start thinking about it.
Exactly.
Right, be prepared.
Be prepared.
Think ahead.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap things up.
Sounds good.
So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.